Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I really was born to be a disappointment. But you know what? I've been silent for a long time. Too long. And now I'm going to tell you how it all happened. Without embellishment. My name is Dan. I'm 33 years old. And for most of my life, I felt like trash that was accidentally left behind after a move. My mom died when I was 9. She broke her neck after falling down the stairs at our neighbor's house. She went to return a pot and never came back. I was at home watching cartoons. I remember my dad coming home with red eyes and sitting down next to me without saying a word. We just sat there, and I didn't understand why he didn't turn on the lights. He hardly spoke for a week. Then it started. Phone calls, errands, colleagues offering their condolences. I remember one of them saying, "Well, she was a good woman, but you're still young." My dad nodded silently, and I sat on the stairs and thought, what does "you're still young" mean? 8 months passed, and Cindy appeared in our house. I didn't immediately realize that she would be here permanently. At first it was just dinners, then sleepovers, and then she was opening the door with her key and straightening my shirt without a smile, as if I were a broken doll that someone had forgotten on the sofa. I didn't hate her. At first, I just wanted her to try to talk to me normally, just once. But she talked to Dad, and to me she spoke through her teeth, or not at all, her favorite. "Shouldn't you be in your room?" As if I were a ghost who had accidentally wandered into their house. "Dad?" He pretended not to notice. I tried to talk to him, twice. Once he replied, "Cindy is trying. You should be grateful that you have a family again." Family? I already knew then that he had a new life and I wasn't part of it. When their first child was born, I saw my father cry with happiness for the first time. Not when I got my report card in elementary school. Not when I carried bags from the store through the snow to help out. No, only then. He carried the baby in his arms as if it were gold, not a child. With each passing year, I felt myself disappearing. The gifts I received on holidays were absurd and careless. Once, when I was 14, I was given a craft kit for children aged 6+. "We thought you'd like to draw," Cindy said. I didn't paint at all. Never. Not once. School was my salvation. I stayed there longer than anyone else. Then I started working part-time jobs, sorting books, delivering newspapers, anything to be away from home. I wasn't beaten, yelled at, or insulted. They just looked right through me. And that's worse. At 17, I packed my things. I had $420, a backpack, a suitcase, and a laptop I had bought myself, hidden in the closet. I didn't cry. I just said, "I'm leaving." My dad was standing in the kitchen doorway with a mug in his hand. He replied, "If you change your mind, come back." But he said it in a way that made it clear he knew I wouldn't come back, and he didn't care. I lived with a friend. Then I rented a room in a basement. Then I found an inexpensive college, applied, and got a scholarship. I worked in a cafe in the evenings and studied during the day. No calls from my family, no congratulations. Only once, on my 20th birthday, did I receive a message from my dad. "Happy birthday. Hope you're doing well." No signature, no punctuation, like a message to a colleague you barely remember. I didn't reply. I didn't call. Yes, he was my father. But I realized one thing. A parent is not someone who gives you blood and a surname. It's someone who doesn't make you feel like trash. More than 10 years passed. I had no family. I had no support. I built my world from scratch. Without anyone's help. I got up early, worked 12 hours a day, and saved every penny. I ate instant noodles and slept with headphones on so I couldn't hear my neighbors yelling. And yet I kept going. And you know what's funny? All those years I was still waiting for him to call and say, "I'm sorry. I messed up." But that never happened. Instead, after all this time, he called in the middle of November. His voice sounded tired, but somehow fake cheerful. He said, "I'm planning to celebrate my anniversary. 60. I think you should come. Everything will be different." I don't know what made me agree. Maybe I just wanted to put an end to it. Or maybe there was this stupid hope inside me that he would finally say what he should have said 20 years ago. "I ruined everything. I'm sorry." You know, there's always that scene in movies where the hero comes home after years away, and everything is resolved with a big hug. But that's movies. This is real life. In real life, you spend 3 days wondering whether you should go. Then you spend 2 more convincing yourself that you're an adult and you don't care. And on the last night before the trip, you wake up in a cold sweat thinking, what if they're laughing at me right now? I bought a nice gift. Nothing fancy, but respectful. A rare single malt whiskey in a beautiful box with a small engraving that says, "Happy Anniversary, Dad." And not because I wanted to suck up to him. Just, I wanted to be human, no matter what. I booked a hotel room. I didn't even consider going home. 6 hours behind the wheel, music, a thermos of coffee. I stared at the road and tried to understand. What am I hoping for? That my father will throw his arms around me? That my stepmother would suddenly say she missed me? No. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could go back there and not break down. The house was almost the same as I remembered it, only the fence was higher. And the cars were better. The yard was clean, the lawn was neat, and there was a garland on the porch. Everything looked decent, cozy, nice, if you didn't know what was inside. I parked on the side of the road, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. It wasn't Cindy or my father who answered the doorbell. It was some teenager. I didn't even know who it was. Probably one of the younger ones. He shouted, "Mom, someone's here," and disappeared. A couple of seconds later, Cindy appeared. She looked the same as before, only with deeper wrinkles. She saw me and made a face as if I were a pizza delivery guy. "Oh, it's you. Come in." No hello or good to see you. Just it's you. I went inside. It was noisy. Music, laughter, dozens of guests. Someone was grilling, someone was pouring drinks. There were many faces I didn't recognize. A few childhood acquaintances, now older. Some looks were surprised. Some were indifferent. I felt like an extra in a movie where everyone knew the script except me. My father was in the garden, in the center of the group. He was wearing a suit. He was holding a glass and joking. When he noticed me, something flashed across his face. I saw him approach and take a step closer. "Dan, I'm glad you came." "Happy anniversary," I replied and handed him the gift. He took the box, looked at it, and nodded. "Thank you. That's nice." And that was it. He returned to the circle of guests. I was seated at a table next to Cindy's children, not a single familiar face. The tablecloth was white, the cutlery gleamed, and in front of each place setting was a card with a name. I was about to sit down when I noticed mine. At first, I couldn't believe it. It didn't say Dan. It didn't say son. Written in black marker was disappointment, neatly, clearly, as if on purpose. I froze. My ears rang. "What? What is this?" I whispered. A familiar voice came from behind me. Cindy. "Come on, don't be offended. It's just a joke. You know how you let us down." She laughed, loudly. Others joined in. Not everyone, but enough for me to feel my face flush. Someone even slapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it, bro. We have jokes like that with my brother." I don't remember how I sat down, how I picked up my glass, how I stood up. I just heard my voice, calm even, almost lifeless. "I'd like to make a toast." Silence. "To the fact that this is the last time you'll see me." My father choked. Someone giggled. Someone dropped their fork. I put down my glass, turned around, and left. Calmly. Without shouting. Without hysterics. Just step by step, past the surprised faces, past my place setting, past their celebration. But I didn't just leave my glass behind. I left them a gift they didn't know about yet. It wasn't in the box with the whiskey. It was much deeper. Their real gift was to come in the morning. They thought I had just lost my mind and left, slamming the door behind me. That I would leave, disappear again for 10 years, and everything would return to their usual, comfortable routine. But the thing is, I didn't just leave. I was done. I had been building up to this moment for years, slowly, quietly, without fanfare. They didn't know who I had become. They didn't know how many sleepless nights I spent sitting at my computer, poring over spreadsheets, taxes, and markets. At first, I just wanted to survive. Then I wanted to prove that I could do it. And then, I realized I wanted more. I wanted to reclaim my right to justice. I first started thinking about it seriously 5 years ago. I was 28. I started a small logistics company. It was a typical business. Couriers, contracts, low margins, and a lot of stress. But things took off. We worked honestly, and honesty is rare in logistics. 2 years later, I already had 18 employees, my own accounting department, and a net profit. I didn't spend money. I didn't buy cars or go on vacation. I invested everything back into the business. First, I started a second company that provided technical support. Then a third that provided technical support for warehouses. No one knew it was all me. I registered each company under different people, retaining control through powers of attorney, nominal directors, and legal technicalities. All for one thing: anonymity. I didn't want anyone to associate my name with anything important. And then an opportunity arose, purely by chance. One of my partners sent me a link to an auction. Collateral properties were being sold. Among them was a house. The house where I grew up. The house where I became a disappointment. I couldn't believe my eyes. I clicked on the link and looked at the documents. Yes, it was the one. The very same. Only now it was real estate with debts, mortgaged to secure a loan for the company my father owned. Apparently, they had gotten themselves into serious debt. I sat there looking at that list for about 10 minutes. My fingers were shaking, not out of anger, out of understanding. This was an opportunity. Their house was for sale, and I could be the one to buy it. I didn't sleep all night. The next day, I started gathering the necessary documents, transferring funds, and preparing people. I didn't want them to know. The deal went through a subsidiary of my third company, which was formerly located in another city and worked through an investment intermediary. Everything looked like a normal real estate transaction. When everything was ready, I made my bid. The house went for 60% of the market price. No one else made an offer, probably because of the debts and future legal proceedings. But I didn't care. 2 weeks later, the house was officially mine. I held the extract from the register in my hands. My name was nowhere to be found, only in the depths of the papers, in a place where no one would look unless they were specifically searching for it. I looked at that piece of paper and felt neither joy nor revenge. I felt like everything inside me had fallen into place. And so, knowing this, I accepted the invitation to the anniversary celebration. Not for them, for myself. I wanted to see them one last time, to make sure that everything was still the same, and leave with the feeling that I no longer owed them anything. The gift I left behind? The day after the party, they received a letter, a standard notification. Due to a change in ownership of the property, in accordance with the terms of the contract, you are required to vacate the premises within 45 days or agree on a new form of lease with the owner's representative. They didn't even have to guess for long. 3 days later, I sent them a representative, an ordinary lawyer, polite, clear. He said that the new owner was not interested in keeping the current tenants, and that they could either leave or rent the annex, a small, damp room that they had previously rented out through Airbnb. They called, of course, first to me personally. Then they started calling the head office of the company through which the deal was made. But no one answered the phone, because everything was done correctly, legally, without scandal. My father sent a letter, an email, no salutation, just a question. Did you do this? I didn't answer, because there was no point. It wasn't revenge. It was responsibility, to give them back everything they left me, emptiness. Now it belonged to them. I thought I would feel satisfaction. That when they opened the letter and saw that their lives were about to collapse, I would feel better. But you know what I felt? Nothing. Just emptiness. Maybe because what they were losing never belonged to me. Or maybe because real revenge isn't a flash in the pan. It's silence. A week after the notice, they tried to negotiate. My company's representative received a letter from them full of standard phrases. Let's discuss. Can the lease be extended? We are willing to reconsider the terms. It all sounded polite, but fear seeped through the lines. We responded formally. The lease was possible, but only for the annex. The main house was to be renovated and vacated. The deadline was 30 days, no exceptions. And then the real show began. My father called me from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Then again, and again. The messages became increasingly desperate. Do you want to kick us out? Is this your idea? I'm still your father. And then from Cindy. If you're doing this because of old grudges, think about the children. We're not homeless. We're a family. Family? They remembered that word? After they sat me down at the table like a disappointment, now they remember who I am to them? I didn't answer. They hired a lawyer. I was expecting that. They tried to contest the deal, citing unethical behavior and family circumstances. But my company's lawyer sent them the documents. Everything was legal. All the deeds were signed. The deal had been verified by the bank. There was no connection to me. No evidence. And then I made a move that, to be honest, I had been thinking about for a long time. We sent notices to the tenants of the premises my father had rented out. Small warehouses, offices, people worked there. But everything was tied to my father's old company, which now also belonged to my network through a chain of transactions. I raised the rent, not by much, but just enough to make most of the tenants decide to leave. It was like a shot in the knee for their budget. Their income collapsed. They couldn't pay their loans. I knew where this would lead. Cindy wrote again. No more accusations. Just, please. We didn't know we hurt you so much. Don't destroy everything. I read those words on the screen and thought, did you ever build anything? Did you ever care about me? Where I was? How I was doing? No. You just lived as if I never existed, as if I were a glitch in your system. And now you're asking for mercy? Dad, of course, didn't write anymore. His pride wouldn't let him. But I felt that he understood. He understood when he saw the documents, because deep down, he knew that only one person in the world could strike so coldly and precisely where it hurt. And that person was his son. They moved into the wing. It was small, cramped, with damp walls and an old boiler. A maid had once lived there, and then they rented it out to tourists. Now it was their new home. In effect, it was in their own backyard, but not of their own free will. And every day, when they stepped onto the porch, they saw the house that had been their pride and joy, their fortress. Now it was a stranger. My agency installed surveillance cameras to monitor the condition of the property. This is common practice during renovations. Only the cameras were pointing directly at the annex. With their permission, by the way. No one read the fine print. I didn't go there. I didn't show up. I didn't need drama. I didn't need reproaches. I didn't need tears. I wanted only one thing, for them to live for at least a month in the shadow I had lived in all my childhood. I didn't show up at the house for almost 3 months, not because I was afraid, but because I was waiting for them to digest everything, until they felt what it meant to have no control over anything, what it meant to look at your windows from a paint-peeling outbuilding, what it meant to no longer be the master, when even the electricity and water are subject to the terms of a new contract. You know what I realized? Power isn't when you yell, throw documents around, or threaten to take someone to court. Power is when you can walk into the house where you were humiliated and you don't have to raise your voice. All you have to do is walk in. And I walked in. It was a weekday morning around 9 o'clock. I had a key, legally registered, just like the owners. I was wearing a suit, not too fancy, but neat. I didn't want to look important. I wanted to be myself, the guy they didn't know. I entered quietly. The house smelled of dust and cold. They didn't heat it to save money. I knew that. I walked past the kitchen, the very one where my father once stood with a mug in his hand and said, "If you change your mind, come back." He was sitting at the table alone, staring at his laptop screen. When I came in, he didn't even recognize me at first. Then he just froze. "Hi," I said, calmly, without a smile. "You..." His voice broke. "So it was you?" I nodded silently. He exhaled, long and heavily. "Why?" I sat down opposite him, slowly. "Because you made me who I am. Not a person, but a project. I wasn't living. I was building myself from the pieces. And now I've just paid back my debt." He rubbed his face. "That's too much. You could have just talked." I smiled, not maliciously, sadly. "I did, when I was 9, when I was 12. When I left at 17, you didn't listen. Back then, you preferred silence. Now it's my turn." He looked away. "Cindy can't take it. The kids are in shock." "And you?" I asked. "I don't know. I'm ashamed." "You don't know what shame is," I said. "Shame is when you sit at the table and the card in front of you says, 'disappointment.' And everyone laughs." He didn't answer. He just looked away. We sat in silence like we did back then, as children. Only then I was scared. Now I was calm. I walked around the house, slowly, as if checking the walls. Everything was as before. The same shelves, the same windows. Only now I saw everything differently. It wasn't a house. It was a stage. And I was finally standing in the center. I went up to the second floor. My stepmother came out of the room. She stopped. She looked at me. "It's you, of course." "It's me," I confirmed. "You understand that they're children, don't you?" "Yes, but I was a child too. Or have you forgotten?" She swallowed. And then she said suddenly, "We didn't think you'd remember like this. We were building a new life. Without me. Yes, without you." She didn't cry. And I didn't shout. Everything had already been said. I turned around and went downstairs. At the door, my father was standing with the very bottle of whiskey I had given him for his anniversary. I didn't open it. All this time. "Don't open it," I said. "Let it be a reminder." I went out and closed the door behind me. Quietly, without a slam. Just closed it. But at that moment I felt something shift inside me. Not satisfaction, not anger, but relief. As if a heavy stone that I had been carrying since childhood had finally fallen from my shoulders. The next morning, I began planning the renovation. The house had to be rebuilt. I drew up the plans myself. The rooms would be different. The interior would be completely new. Nothing of the old house would remain. Not the floors, not the walls, not even the smell. They stayed in the annex. They were allowed to stay until the end of the school year. I wasn't a monster. The children had the right to finish school. But the residence agreement clearly stated, temporary, no extension. A week later, my father wrote again. Not a complaint, not an accusation. Just, "You made me nothing. I understand that. I hope you feel better now." I stared at those words for a long time, and then I deleted the message. Because, yes, I felt better. Not because they felt worse, but because I was no longer the one they had thrown overboard. I thought that after that meeting at home, when I was standing in the living room, and my father was holding that very bottle of whiskey, I would feel better, that everything inside would calm down. But something was gnawing at me. Not pain. No, the pain was gone, but the memories remained. They don't go away, they just become quiet neighbors. For the next few weeks, I watched. I didn't interfere. I didn't visit. I just watched. Through the management company's reports, through cameras, through short formal reports on the condition of the property. I didn't want to see them in person, not because I was afraid, but because everything had already been said. My part was over. I knew what time they left. I knew how Cindy complained about the internet, which had gotten worse because we changed providers. I knew that my father smoked behind the shed, even though he didn't used to. I saw the children sitting quietly on the steps of the wing, playing on their phones. A small, cold world, angular. There was no safety in it anymore. Once I saw my father standing in front of the house, just looking at it. For a long time. As if he was saying goodbye. His shoulders were hunched. This was not the man who used to snap his fingers and say to me, "Don't be rude to Cindy. She's trying." This was an old man, and I realized that time had done to him what I couldn't do. They knew when they had to leave. The date was specified in the contract. May 31st, 8 in the morning. After that, cleaning, dismantling, and the start of renovations. We worked efficiently, according to schedule, without emotion. 3 days before the date, my father sent a letter. On paper, handwritten. I stared at the envelope for a long time. I wondered whether to tear it open. I opened it. I'm not making excuses, and I'm not asking for forgiveness if you're not ready to hear it. But I'm asking you to think before you erase us from your life for good. We're not all bad. We're just stupid. We lived as if we had no debts. We squandered everything, ourselves and you. If there's even one warm thought left in you, let it speak for us." I read it twice, without emotion, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. I grew up without warm thoughts. I had nothing to lean on. A day later, Cindy came by. No call. She just knocked on the office door. I was there. Part of the fence was being dismantled on the property. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Only on the go," I replied. I walked, she walked beside me. "The kids don't know what to think. They ask why, I can't explain it to them, can you?" "No," I replied, "because you never explained anything to me." Then we both lost. "No," I said, "you lost. I survived." She fell silent. Then she said, "This isn't about money anymore, is it?" It was never about money. It was about the silence you gave me instead of a family. I stopped. "Cindy, you have 3 days. I won't touch you. But after that, you have to leave, forever." "That's it? We'll never talk again?" "No, because this was the conversation." She left, without looking back. The night before they left, I drove to the property. I just wanted to take a look. It was dark, with only the lights on in the wing. Shadows flickered. I sat in my car with the headlights off, and for some reason, I remembered how I once stood in that yard with a broom, and Cindy shouted from the window, "Don't forget the windowsill!" I was 11. Now there's a crooked curtain in that window, and nothing else. On May 31st, they left. Without any drama. No drama. I saw them loading their belongings into an old car. I saw one of the children approach the gate, look back at the house, and then get into the car. A minute later, everything was quiet. They were gone. I got out of the car and walked around the yard. The wind swayed the old garden lamp. The house was dark, not a soul in sight. I took out my key, opened the door, and went inside. I walked to the kitchen. It was the same, only empty. I sat down at the table. I put my hands on the surface. It was smooth, like glass, and suddenly I felt it. Not joy, not victory. Freedom. Strange, quiet freedom. It was as if I had finally left the dark room where I had spent 20 years and closed the door. You know, sometimes revenge seems like something loud, like an explosion, like a scene from a movie where the hero shouts, "Now you know how it feels." But in reality, it's different. In reality, revenge is silence. Cold, long, and slow. Without victory fanfare. Just day after day you get your life back, without them. It's been 3 months since they left. The house is now a construction site. The walls have been torn down, the floor is open, there are no stairs, just a single box covered with construction netting. Workers walk around in hard hats, discussing blueprints. Sometimes they ask me, "Did you live here before?" And I just smile. No, never. All I left of my old house is the foundation. They even tore down the garden, the roots were rotten, like everything in this place that was once called home. I moved to the city. I bought an apartment, a simple one, bright, with white walls and windows facing the park. There is nothing there from my past, not a single photograph, not a single item from that house. I even changed my last name, legally. I just didn't want to be a person with their name anymore. When I come home in the evening, I don't think about them. Sometimes, just a fleeting thought, like an echo, but no longer like pain, more like a lesson. Yes, I don't have a big family. Yes, I don't have a father who would be proud of me. There are no photos on the mantelpiece and no phone calls on holidays, but I have something I didn't have before, the feeling that I can breathe. Recently, I was driving past my old neighborhood, not on purpose. The GPS just took me down some familiar streets, and I stopped, got out of the car, walked up to the gate. There was no one there, just the wind and the fresh concrete. I stood there for a couple of minutes, not to say goodbye, but to check. Was there anything left? And indeed, there was nothing. No anger, no fear, no desire to get anything back. On the way back, I stopped at a cafe, a regular one by the road. I ordered coffee, sat by the window, and suddenly I realized this must be happiness. Not the kind that screams in your face, but the kind that sits quietly beside you. When you no longer owe anything to anyone. Maybe I did everything wrong. Maybe I should have forgiven, opened up, talked. But I couldn't. I lived too long in a house where my nameplate said disappointment, and maybe I really was. But now I'm a person, a real one, not theirs. Myself, my name is Dan, and that was my story. And that was